Planning and zoning committee order now.
Sorry, we must get rid of this.
Attendance and full agenda. I can get started. First item on the list is going to be the Willow Lane School Week Community Access. So we have two plans, one from Township to show you what the off-site improvements are so far, and what the other plan should be from the school district to show what the on-site. I'd like to do the school district one first, so if you guys can come forward and present what you have. Okay, and everybody, there is a sign-up sheet on the front desk. Everybody, please see that you sign it, so we at least have a record of who's here. And if you have comments, please go.
For the record, I'm Paul Suzak with Liberty Engineering. We were working with the district on the site plan for this project. We were also the ones that our firm had done the original site planning for not only the school but for the firehouse for the township. So what you have before you is a concept of how to change the circulation patterns at the elementary school. As part of a study that the district did, it has appeared that they are getting a tremendous amount of car traffic well in excess of what they anticipated they would get at this school. As a result, and I think through some discussions with the township, it's creating some issues with access to and from the firehouse. Basically, the way the school was designed, what we try to do with Element, we try to do with all schools, is we separate bus traffic and car traffic. So the way this school operates are the buses come in off of Mill Creek, they come behind the building. There is, when you look at this plan, there's the large parking lot, and there's a driveway that splits the large parking lot. So the buses circulate around the back of the building, and they get into the parking lot closest to the gymnasium, and they stack in there and they load, and the buses leave the same way they came in. Then on the flip side, the cars will come in through Sauerkraut, and they come across the front of the building, and they line up and load and unload depending on the time of day. They make a U-turn back out through the one-lane parking lot and then back out Sauerkraut. That's how it was designed, and that's how it's working today. What's happening, at least on certain days, is we're stacking, it appears that cars are stacking out on the Sauerkraut, and of course they're in that main driveway, which is the main access for the firehouse. So we took a look at this site, and really, it's somewhat of a landlocked site. It's got some limitations as to how you can change it and how you can change access to it. As a point of reference, I think it was about 25 acres site. Probably more than half of this site is a floodplain, and we even had received variances to do some minor construction grading in the floodplain. And actually the main access off the Sauerkraut was a variance to construct in the floodplain. So we have some limitations as to coming forward towards Sauerkraut with this property. If you were to look out on Willow Lane, there was never an access proposed out there because we could not get adequate sight distance, mainly if you were pulling out, looking up to the right because of the hill. The driveway going down to Mill Creek is actually on township property with an agreement for maintenance and shared access to it. So the school, what we're proposing to do is essentially simply flip the way the school operates. And the cars will come in the back and the buses will come in the front. And then in order to do that, I need to do some minor site improvements. And they're depicted in the shading that we have on the plan. And the main improvement is when I bring the buses in along the front of the building, I've got to get them back out that tight turn, which was really designed for cars. So we propose to widen that driveway enough that that bus can turn around. And I'm in this area here. Turn around and then come back out Sauerkraut. There's also another improvement we're doing on the Mill Creek driveway, which is the walking path. When it was constructed, we had to cross the road because of the detention pond. Well, we're going to take another look at that and maybe build a small 2 or 3 foot high retaining wall to push the bank back enough, and then we're going to put the walking path on one side so that when you enter, if you were to use the walking path off of Mill Creek, you're just walking up one side of the driveway. You don't have to cross it. We're also going to propose to put some gates in, and the gates are simply going to be these types. It's the swing arm type gate. And the idea is that the staff at the 2 times of the day when the comings and goings of the traffic can close this off and keep the cars out of the way of the buses and vice versa. So you swing the arms, shut the driveways off during the drop off and pickup, and then you open it back up and the site functions wide open again. Other than that, there's a lot of signage proposed, and a lot of the signage is to direct traffic. Buses only, office hour, crowd cars, stacking, things of that nature. The other thing we did on this plan, because your zoning ordinance has a requirement for X number of drop-off spaces based on the size of the elementary school, based on the size of any school, we depict how we meet the zoning requirement, and it's depicted by these, so that I achieve the right number so that the property stays in compliance with zoning. It's not intended to be stop, get out. It simply depicts that I can stack the number per zoning.
There's 2 issues. One would be our ordinance. The other is your need. It seems like the school district has a long history of the need being so much greater than our ordinance. And I'm just wondering, and that seems to be some of the revolving problems that we've had over the years where these projects just simply aren't working because the need exceeds the ordinance. And I guess one of my questions to you would be, is this going to meet your need, or is this only going to meet the ordinance?
I don't want to say this the wrong way, but this has absolutely nothing to do with the ordinance. The depiction on the plan of the rectangles is to show you I meet the ordinance. The flipping of the traffic pattern meets our needs in that I now can stack cars from Mill Creek Road all the way to where this sign here in a long line, and then they queue waiting to be dealt with by the administration, letting the kids in and out depending on the time of day.
What's the width there, Paul?
Width of where?
The access drive off of Mill Creek Road.
They're 24 feet.
Is that queuing going to affect the operation of the firehouse?
No, because what happens is we took them off the sauerkraut driveway.
So you're saying the fire department would enter and exit now on Sauerkraut?
Well, they can still enter and exit off of Mill Creek, but
If
the
there's
concern that was brought to our attention, I'm not going to speak to the fire department, was that this driveway was getting blocked. And so one of our main solutions to this is get the cars out of here. We can control our buses, and the buses will fit in here and not block this driveway.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't fit. When you look at this distance, I can only fit so many cars. Flipping this pattern, I fit twice the number of cars on the property.
Mm-hmm.
And the other issue is the gates. With the gates in effect, there's only really technically 1 access point now. The ordinance requires 2 access points for use of this nature. Now, I understand what you're trying to accomplish by utilizing the gates, but like in an emergency situation now, you've effectively removed one of the entrances that could be used by either buses or by cars. Because one of the variances, I believe, if I recall correctly, is that entrance is literally in the 100-year floodplain down there on Sauerkraut. That was the other reason for a need for a higher elevation entrance. In case there is flooding, that's going to be underwater. And this will be the only entrance then off of Mill Creek Road. So that's the only some concern I have utilizing the gates. But I understand what you're trying to accomplish, because people may not respect the pattern if you don't have the gates in force. So I know it's a little bit
simply a matter of a little reinforcement because signage and pavement markings don't seem to always do it.
I understand. Yeah.
We're not opposed to not having the gates. We don't need to do this with gates. We thought that would be something that everybody would embrace. But if you'd rather not the gates, we won't do gates. They could actually do movable wooden barriers like I know Parkland does that at Springhouse.
And I don't know how to feel about this. I'm just reacting. This is the first time I'm really seeing this plan. So as an old reviewer, I'm just reacting to what I see.
Can't help it.
We're certainly, the gates, if the gates are causing a problem, the gates don't have to be there. It's just a barrier for that 20-minute, half-hour, twice a day type thing.
The gates would be fully automated
No.
or
Fully manual.
manual.
Fully manual and there would be.
It's that tube, you know what
There would be a
Swing
person.
one of those swings.
Swing ones, too.
Yeah.
Swing out, swing out.
Well, there's multiple people going to be on
The
site.
only reason I'm asking is somebody could easily open the gate if there's an issue.
Yeah, if there's an issue, what basically, I don't know the term of the total number, but you probably have 7 or 8 staff members all around the school directing traffic, managing the kids and things like that. It's not likely those gates are, way over there and nobody can get to them.
And we will have a staff member right there.
It's actually probably a staff member at both places, because technically it's walking because of the crosswalk. So the talk is to have a staff member here, and obviously there's going to be staff members here.
At each gate.
They're there anyway. They're going to be there whether those gates are there or not.
So my point to it is they can swing the gate open if there's an emergency. It's not locked, it just swings.
Could you point out where the gates are again? I can see one back.
There's a
That's-
gate
that's
here,
there,
and there'd be a
okay.
gate over
All
here.
right. So if the fire company needs to come out and it's gated, they can move it.
They could bump it with the front of the truck and it's gone. It'll just swing.
It's not going
The fill that you're putting in, is that going to affect, is that going to affect 100 here?
No, it's just the 100 here. It's just a real minor.
Okay, so you don't.
And quite frankly, I have to survey this area. I may not even need that much fill to do what I have to do.
I'm just saying maybe a wall would work better if you're,
And it may
if
be-
you're in a 100,
Right.
That would be a zoning criteria.
I will not get in on it here. Okay.
Okay.
Good.
Okay.
Or might
Write
be
that
down.
one down.
We're not, it's to a plan to comply. We're not looking,
I know.
back to zoning and all,
Yeah,
It's
so
tight.
I'd rather you not have to
Right.
go any further
Nope,
than you have to.
we're not. It's really a plan to address the evolved, how the building has evolved.
Now, contrary to what anybody in the audience has heard at the school district, the school board meetings, the township has not received these plans prior to this. Township has not reviewed these plans. The township has not approved these plans. Actually, I think what was actually acquired might have been a sketch plan, which we looked at for determination as to whether we could go through an abbreviated process for this project, that it would not have to go to the planning commission, it would simply go to staff for review, come to this committee for review, and then go to the board of commissioners for final approval. I'm looking at my director of planning and my chief engineer here, is what is the process for this plan now then?
We're waiting for a submittal from the school district. I think they're waiting for direction from us, but waiting for a submittal from the school district, and then we will take it through that expedited review process that's in our subdivision land development ordinance. Essentially, they're modifying the existing approved plan, and we need a new plan to be recorded, so we have an accurate plan, and also this gives us an opportunity to review it.
Okay, so
From
there
a
is,
timing standpoint, we should be able to come back to the next committee meeting, because that's basically a month from now, and I don't think it'll take that long. So
If
we
the
should be
engineers are ready to
prepared.
do that. The other thing I would say is we did have a couple meetings with the school district, really to talk about offsite improvements and, and the concept of this, but we did look at what the process would be, and if there's no variances, that would be the process that we would follow.
so if this goes to the zoning hearing board for whatever reason, if it has to go there, if they're filling up a plan or something like that, we typically look for some sort of recommendation from our planning commission, so it will go to them and then to the zoning hearing board. So I'm hoping you don't have to go to the zoning hearing board for whatever, any issue. So that's what I'm saying. Okay. That being said, I know that our fire department, there they are, had looked at the sketch plan, and I'm going to ask them to come forward. I'm going to ask them to give us their input into this at least.
Excuse my dress.
Oh, I-
Oh, my goodness.
You look a lot more relaxed than the rest of us. Just keep moving here.
My main concerns, and my personal opinion, whether you should bus or not bus, is not the reason I'm here. My underlying concern is, are we going to end up shutting the firehouse down for 2 hours a day? Once in the morning, once in the afternoon, because my guys can't get in, and therefore my equipment can't get out. This switch in the traffic pattern is all well and fine, but you said it yourself, your goal is to not intermingle the bus and the car traffic. So that leads me to believe that you want my fire team to come in with the few hundred other cars that are going to be dropping their kids off in the morning. Now, if there's a backlog there, what is my delay of getting the guys into the complex, to the station, and out the door?
Well, I have to assume that that will not affect the fire team.
Well, but-
The fire team will still be able to use sauerkraut.
Okay, so they are allowing buses and cars to intermingle.
Will be
Well,
signed.
only
Only to extent of fire people.
Firefighters.
Because there's a joint, we have a joint
I've
agreement
signed
of
it.
rights of access, so.
We will sign that driveway.
Well, I understand the fire trucks themselves, but the guys are coming into the complex in their own cars.
Well, your emergency guys are the emergency people, so.
Okay,
Yeah, they're
well,
coming-
Well, I mean, let's put it this
I
way.
guess the question is, how do you differentiate them? We don't run blue lights in Lower Macungie Township, haven't for 20 years, so there's no difference between the car that my guy's driving versus the car that you're driving. And is there somebody staff-wise down at that corner pointing the vehicle traffic around the bend, or how is that going to work?
The school district does not have a policing ability for the site. It's going to rely on signage and staff. I believe you're going to have staff at this entrance.
If the gates go forward, I assume.
But that's
this
the gate off the back, though.
Well, yeah, but I'm just saying that if a person does come in, other than a fire person, in other words, a fire person comes in, they're gonna turn in here. They're not gonna come up to here.
Or somebody dropping their kid off that doesn't want to wait in the line here is going to come up, cut across, and try and cut in the line.
Oh, well, that certainly is, I guess, a possibility.
Because I'll be honest with you, I see a lot of that right now, that our driveway across the firehouse is a cut-through.
That's-
And on big events for the school, our parking lot becomes a parking lot for school events, as well as this main drag here. That whole fire lane's blocked up at times with cars, just because that's where people choose to park.
Chief Nelson, is that a problem anyway, with either access proposal? I mean, you have the existing problem now, right? People.
Yes,
coming
my
through.
question is how big is it going to get exacerbated?
How much would it be any worse?
Yes.
So now, I'm sorry, now the queuing of your buses in the morning and in the afternoon, how far do you anticipate that queue to run?
There's 11 buses. In the morning, they come, they drop off, they leave. In the afternoon, all 11 buses arrive, and they load together, and then they leave.
If I were to draw 11 buses on.
It should get them somewhere down. To get the 11 buses, I could actually get one of the buses passed, but the difference is we control the buses. They're not going to park where we don't want them to park, where I can't control the other people coming to the site. And then I guess the simple response to you is I can't engineer a site anywhere that addresses when you start creating shared driveways that would eliminate your issue.
Okay.
I don't have a way to do this.
So my underlying concern is correct, that we could literally be shut down for 2 hours a day, one in the morning, one in the afternoon. Or if nothing else, severely delayed in getting out the door.
How does it work now with the conflict you have? Do you still have that problem?
It's not too bad right now, and understand that, we're running, to throw out a number, 450 calls a year. Now that's 7 days a week, 365 days a year, 24 hours a day. Now if you sit there and do the math and say, how many calls happen between 8 and 9 in the morning and 3 or 4 in the afternoon, Monday through Friday, excluding holidays, snow days, all that other stuff, at the end of the day it's relatively nominal. But, capital B-U-T, underline, it still can happen.
When you leave the firehouse, they're coming out Sauerkraut, correct?
It depends which way the call is.
You will make that turn and go around the back.
We have exited out this way, we have exited out that way. It all depends where the call is.
In the flip scenario, the Sauerkraut driveway becomes wide open, not blocked at all. And if you choose to go out Mill, they're not stacking on the exit lanes.
Well, but in theory, this becomes wide open. You said it yourself, you can't prohibit the public from using that for their kids.
Well, they can't get to where well,
Unless they cut through our firehouse driveway.
What if consideration was given for a swing gate of the driveway over here, so that people couldn't get through, but you would still have complete access to them? Well, that's your property.
If the walking goes forward, then how many buses would you have? You wouldn't have 11
I
yet, right? Or-
can't speak to the busing issue. I don't know. I know what your question is, and I do not have an
I'm
answer.
saying it probably wouldn't be as
It
great.
would be less.
It would be less.
Maybe only one bus, but it would be less.
It will be less if some other plan is implemented. I need to stress that this is not being done because of that issue. This is being done because as a result of the studying going on for the school
Sure.
and complaints and conversations with the township, we were asked to look at alternatives here.
Yeah, but at the same time, while you're doing these changes, we should try to incorporate how it's going to function.
Correct.
In the near future. Because obviously there's two commitments here. There's a school district commitment on site. And the school district may or may not go forward with that irregardless of their decision to bus. Is that correct?
The decision to do this project,
Correct.
that's correct.
Okay. Now, there's a second decision that the township has to make where we're going to be spending a lot of money off-site. So obviously, the township wants some kind of commitment on the busing issue before we go ahead and spend, a lot of
I
money
understand that.
off-site. So there's a little bit of a chicken and an egg type of
Right.
situation here. And I haven't obviously discussed that with my colleagues, but I'm just bringing that up where if we're going to go off-site and do these things, we're going to need some kind of commitment from the school district that walking is going to take place.
That makes perfect sense to me, but that has nothing to do with,
Okay,
that has nothing to do with this plan.
okay.
This plan would achieve some improvements if the district decided to go with a walking plan, but it's not why we're here. We're here because we're trying to address some concerns that a few different parties have as to how the site is currently.
Existing situation.
So if I understand this to be correct, an existing circulation situation that you have for buses and parents, and there's an existing problem that the fire department has, and you're wondering if this makes it worse than what you already have. Do you think it might?
Oh, I would venture to say that it's going to make it worse. I mean, you bring in more cars in, it's going to only increase the problem.
How does doing this bring more cars in?
It's a
Well,
separate
it
problem.
goes back to the fact that you said you can't control the personal vehicles using the Sauerkraut Road entrance. And if somebody right now, I'll use the term, is lazy enough while they're driving their car to cut across here to get from point A to point B, do you really think they're not going to be lazy enough to, well, I don't want to sit in that line, so I'm going to shoot up here, cut across it, see if I can jump in the line. It's human nature is what it is. And understand, I'm not here to be argumentative or whatever. At the end of the day, I need to make sure I can get my guys in and my apparatus out. How that's done, I don't necessarily really care, but when it happens and we go from 5 minutes and some change out the door to 15 minutes and some change out the door, and there's an issue because of that, I want to have the answer that I give to either the Board of the Commissioners or the public that we're serving as to why did it take an extra 10 minutes to get your apparatus out the door. And whether this plan goes through or not, I don't want to say it doesn't really concern me, it does, but I'm not here to say you have to bus the kids, I'm not here to say you have to make the kids walk. I just want to be able to get my guys in and my apparatus out. And I know at some point in time, the meeting I went back in the end of June, beginning of July of last year, we were discussing adding some electronic flashing lights at various places so that the general public knows when the apparatus is leaving. And that would be something that was controlled on our end, whether it's a push button at our station, emergency vehicle exiting, and I guess that kind of fell off the paper, but, it's all about safety of the kids and everybody using it, and I want people to know when our trucks are leaving, if we're going to increase the overall, not only car traffic, but foot traffic.
That'd be a good solution in your mind if there was some kind of a...
Well, at least let people know that there's something going on and there may be fire apparatus leaving. Now, obviously, that's an additional cost, because you got the signage and the electric to the signage and then some type of control device that we can activate at our will. But with that being said, if this plan is about safety, which it is, and trying to keep things flowing smoothly, I think advanced warning of emergency vehicles leaving rather than just seeing the truck coming at you with the lights on might be the worthwhile expense, but.
Okay, good, thank you for this. Just enlighten me for at least my personal edification here, that in the afternoon when you're picking your child up, the cars coming in, the first 10 or so will park here. Do the parents have to run into the school building to pick up their child? Is that the procedure?
The principal has it set up so that there's staff on the sidewalk, and the kids are released then as their parents are coming in to line up. And that can be adjusted year to year, and that's really up to the principal, and what we hoped was a parent committee to work out the details of how that was going to be done. That's been done every fall by the principal, and any parent who was interested could have input on that, and we have had no problems with that kind of an arrangement because we have a professional as the principal. He knows what he's doing. He's set it up properly for the last 3 years, and we have every confidence that he's going to be able to work with the parents and set it up again for next fall.
The parents have to park in order to do that?
They have to stop.
So,
But they don't get out of the car.
Okay, I'll take questions for John. I see them. Okay. If I was the last car in that queue, how long would I have to wait to get around to the point where I have to pick up my child?
That depends on the day and how many parents are driving. I mean, that's a variable.
Give me the worst case. You just heard our fire chief say something about, locking driveways and such. I'm just curious, if I gotta wait in this line for 20 minutes or so and I'm in a rush, there's gotta be something else I'm gonna do. I'm gonna zip up here, park and run in and get it. And so, but I'm looking for a system that works. I'm looking for a plan that works. I don't wanna see something come in and then, well, this didn't work, so let's try something I don't know about. So, okay, I saw you had a question.
Yes, Susan Coonan. I just wanted to correct something that Mr. Glancy said in response to what Mr. Erdman was asking as to whether or not the parents have to park and get out of the vehicle. And the answer to that in the current situation is yes. Parents are required to park their vehicle in the drop-off lane as well as along the fence and curbing, so they're double parking. And they have to proceed to the door, show their identification, sign out their child, and then walk their child to the car. In the current situation, parents are parked along the curb next to the school, the sidewalk next to the school, so they can get into their vehicle there. However, there is a current safety situation where parents have to walk their child across the lane where the cars are parked because the cars are double parked along the fence. So there's a lot of crossing in between moving vehicles in the current situation. So the basic answer is yes, parents have to park their car and get out of their vehicle to pick up their child in the current process.
Do they go into the building and?
They wait outside the door, doors 21 and 22, which are located by the kindergarten classrooms.
Now, currently, that's along this area, right? Cars?
Okay, okay. And is the sign-out procedure then?
There's a sign-out procedure. You have to show your identification and sign a list to sign out your child. And that's the end of the day dismissal.
And how long does that take? How long do you park your car, get out, walk over, pick up the child at the back of your car and leave?
It depends how early you get to the school. Parents are usually there probably around 10 after 3 for a 3:30 dismissal. So the cars, if I arrive at the school at 3:25, with 3:30 dismissal, I'm usually ending up having to park in the parking lot, which is on the other side where the buses park, walk over, wait on the line, sign out my child. So it could take anywhere from 10 to 15 minutes on a good day. If it's a rainy day or a busy day, it's worse.
Weather has a lot to do with it, yeah.
So this plan, would that improve upon that situation? Would it allow the process to go smoother?
We believe it will, but again, the principal needs to put the details for his plan in place, and he's done that the last 3 years with no problem.
All right, well, okay. I guess, as I alluded to before, this plan has to be presented to the township for submission. where it will undergo a review by our staff.
Correct.
By the fire department, I would assume.
Yep.
Oh, absolutely.
By our engineer.
Yep,
And
Even if this goes through the amended process, like, you know,
Yep.
we want comments from
Yeah,
the
we
fire
still refer
department.
I would think so too. So we'd be looking for so ducks in a row before it comes back to us for that submission for approval. Okay. I did see a couple other hands. I know you had your hand up.
My comments echoed that of Mrs. Cummins.
Okay. And you had,
Yeah, I know that we're separating the walking issue from this, but I would think you have to consider this plan. If children are going to be walking, you have to assume there's going to be several hundred more cars coming through that driveway. And that means how many cars can fit in that Mill Creek entrance? They will get backed up. And there will be a lot more traffic coming in on Mill Creek from both directions.
That's my ultimate concern, sir, that irregardless of the numbers of walkers versus bus people, the parents in this township, 80% of them, they're gonna drive them there. That's just my gut feeling. The parents in my own subdivision drive their child a half a block to the bus stop and wait there. So they're not gonna walk a half a mile to the school. That's just my, just my observation.
you probably walked uphill.
Both ways.
Commissioner Lance, I just wanted to, you had asked previously how many buses, what the bus number changes would be with the walking plans, and I actually have that number here, I can tell you. Currently, there are 11 buses. There are two options that the school district is considering. One is for children that live within 1.5 miles to walk, and if they go with that plan, then there will only be 5 buses driving to Willow Lane. So that would be an elimination of 6. If they do option 2, which is only the 3/4 of a mile, then we'll have a total of 8 buses coming to the school.
It's only 3 of us now.
So, but that would be less of a queue in the driveway over there.
For the bus traffic.
Yeah, we might not block this then.
Yeah, you may not. Did you do a traffic count or anything like that to indicate the flows before and after what we expect from this?
No. I mean, we counted, we actually get about 140 cars a day right now.
You get 140 cars, is that in the morning and then 140 in the afternoon?
It averages
Okay, so
about
you get
140.
140.
Per trip,
Yeah, per day. That's probably okay. And you don't have an idea as to what it's going to be with options A and B? No? Did you do a count?
No, well, unfortunately, the school did a survey, an online survey. They did 2, actually. The first one was considered invalid because we had some frustrated parents answer it multiple times. But regardless of that fact, the initial survey did actually try to get at that information. It did ask if you resided in a development that was losing busing, whether or not you would drive your child. Unfortunately, the redo of the survey neglected to include that question. So the answer could have been found out, but unfortunately they opted not to include that question again.
I think the other important thing is they'll be able, if there are more than 140, you can stack more than 140 cars now with the realigned queue, correct?
Can you stack 300?
All right, you have a question.
Yes, as I understand it, if walking is implemented, it would affect 341 Willow Lane Elementary School students. So that might be a number that you would use to base a percentage that you think might drive. So if, let's say, half the people, and I think I'm being generous with half, decide to drive their children, you're probably looking at an additional 170 cars in the morning and an additional 170 cars in the afternoon.
What really is going to cause the problem, the way I see it, is in bad weather. Maybe nobody's going to walk.
Yeah, now you've got
Everybody's going to be
450
driven,
cars.
and we're going to have cars,
Actually, just to add on to what Mr. Rhodes said, I know at one of the board meetings, the 300 number has been bandied about, but the most recent number, I think, may actually be in the 400s because the initial walking proposal did not include the developments of Penns Meadow and Brookfield Estates, and those now have been included in potential walkers, so that I think does up the number to somewhere around
it
400.
comes west of townhouses, so I assume that there's a few children there.
Yeah, I know a couple of families that live in that area.
Okay. I did see a question back there.
I just wanted to add that we're talking about 3 times a day, because there's kindergarten is half day. So especially the fire department would like to go to that too. I'm sure that, the buses and cars are 3 times a day, actually. Of course, the larger
Actually,
in the
4,
morning.
if you consider, because there's
Oh,
the
it's actually
pickup
4, you're right.
and the drop-off in the kindergarten.
Well, this with kindergarten,
It's
that
more
number
manageable.
is obviously less,
Yeah.
so there should be less of a problem
Right.
for that situation.
All right.
It depends if it's a bus.
It is not the position of this committee to question whether busing is the issue. It is only that we are looking at what plans need to be provided, what needs to be done in order to make this a safe and hopefully efficient system. And I will say, I think at this point, unless there are further questions, I'm going to ask our township engineer to present the plan for off-site improvements. But before he does that, sorry, I will say we did receive a copy of your report, the 17-page report, which I will forward to my engineer, which he probably already has, for whatever consideration it is in preparation of this. And I will ask the question right now is, in this, even though you may not have the answer, in this proposal, are you going to allow for bicyclists, kids to arrive on bicycle as part of this plan, or is it simply going to be bus, ride, or walk?
We have a bus rack, or a bicycle rack, at the front of the building. Was put there for a reason, so if they want to ride their bicycles.
Okay, well, if that's the case, I at least would like to see standards for a trail system that has to include bike and pedestrian traffic. That is a 4-foot wide trail, which maybe the towns should put in along the streets, is not necessarily wide enough to accommodate both bicycle traffic and pedestrian traffic. While along public street, bicyclists, I think technically are supposed to use the street system to go with the flow of direction of traffic. On site, it might be a little bit different, but at least you should be prepared to address that issue before it comes back.
You know, Doug, just so you know, the township is planning to stripe sauerkraut with the bike lane this year because the right-of-way is wide enough to accommodate that.
Okay.
Hasn't been done yet, but that's on the to-do
Okay,
list
so
for
that's
this
what we
year.
have to do this.
A little more of a concern.
It would be, there's an asphalt, driveway on the south side, I guess that's the south side now.
But I guess what Commissioner Brown is saying, though, is that the bikes technically are supposed to use the carway and not the bike path.
Right, yeah.
But
They are considered a vehicle and it's
Right, they're supposed to go
sidewalk.
Right, at least on sauerkraut, and then we have those asphalt multi-use trails on one side of the street. Not perfect, but there is some separated path that's
Okay,
there or anticipated.
okay, yes.
I just wanted to mention that I have looked at the bike rack that exists at Willow Lane. It's a relatively small bike rack, and I think if children were going to be encouraged to bike to school, that we would need to make some adjustments. Also, the placement of that bike rack is currently in the bus drop-off, what will be the bus drop-off area, so there'll be a substantial amount of children exiting buses. The bike rack is located right by the
That-
bike
I'm
lane.
sure they could accommodate that, yeah.
So that, don't forget about it. Thank you very much. Okay, I'm sorry. Alan or Bill, please present what the township is doing. It is not the intention of this board, hopefully the Board of Commissioners, to hold this project up to the point where it cannot be accommodated, at least for offset improvements for this year. Okay, so we are moving along the lines of doing what we have to do so that at the start of school year, if there's a problem, it's not going to be on the township ends, okay?
Just to elaborate on that, Doug, the tentative schedule at this point, if everything moves forward on any setbacks, is to advertise on April 29th, and we're anticipating completion around August 9th. So we actually have some leeway that if we run into issues, we have a couple of weeks before school actually starts.
So
that's our schedule at this point, and we don't see any issues right now with meeting that.
that's our schedule, but as Commissioner Lansing alluded to a little before, there has to be a commitment from the school district to move, because this will cost taxpayers, something along the lines of $100,000 or $50,000 or something like that. We're not willing to spend that money in the school district
maybe is not going to move forward with this plan this year. So,
And obviously, the HOPs will probably take the longest.
Well, it's actually been filed, it's already been filed for us. Yeah, that's been filed.
Oh, that's good.
That's why we're not,
Okay.
we're not anticipating a problem, because anything that would have been a problem is behind us, so we're comfortable with that schedule at this point.
okay.
That would be all through the bidding process. And that-
Yeah, it's all set out step by step between those 2 dates.
May I ask a question, Bill? Are you planning to present this to the public board meeting at any time?
Yes, basically, the advertising date is April 29th, so there's an opportunity anytime in the month of April to go on the agenda for the Board of Commissioners. And when it comes down to the award of it, it would be presented to the Public Works Committee for recommendation of award on May 27th, and then go to the board for award of the contract on June 6th.
All right,
But
personally,
this is-
with the amount of attention this is getting, I'd like to see a public presentation as soon as you could do it.
We could do that in April, the first or
April
second
4th
meeting.
is your first meeting.
Even prior to, I understand your approval process, we have to advertise and
Mhm.
Public Works and all that, but I would like to see a public meeting to the BOC of what your tentative agenda is subject to these things,
Right.
as soon as we can do it.
That could be the first meeting in April, because it would basically be the plan you're looking at, and since we're anticipating advertising the end of April, it's well in advance of that date.
Okay, Sarah, could you please ask Renee to put that on our agenda and advertise it, so the public knows that that's being done? Thank you.
Sorry for the delay.
Sorry, gentlemen.
That's okay. Basically, this is the plan, although I recognize that it sounds like there was discussion that the decision, if it was to go forward, would include these 2 developments over here, Hunts Meadow and Brookfield. So those are not shown on this plan. But otherwise, this plan depicts basically the proposed improvements. The yellow signals are this represents the school zone on Willow Lane and also on Mill Creek Road, on both sides where the pedestrians would be in conflict with the vehicles.
So just before you go on, for the audience, you can see those 4
Can we
yellow
let
ones.
us stand up and walk?
These are the 2 on Lowell Lane.
You raise
One
your
is
hand
just
first.
adjacent to Sauerkraut, the other is up at Wheatland Drive. And there's 2 on Mill Creek, the one again near Sauerkraut, and the other one is up in the proximity of just beyond the driveway that comes in from Mill Creek. So there'd be 2 sets, one in each direction.
So those are the large yellow areas on the plan. Also included are 5 ADA accessible handicap curb ramps, 4 of which don't exist today, and 1 of which has a significant offset. Those are designated by the orange arrows. So those are located at the driveway entrance here on both sides, and 2 other locations throughout here and 1 over here. The white lines are the proposed 6-inch white line crosswalks, and those are throughout the developments and follow the anticipated pedestrian routes, which are shown in the grayish or whitish arrows.
And question, when we put in crosswalks like that, do we usually also put in a stop bar at the stop sign where, appropriately distanced back?
Historically, the township has not utilized the stop bars as much as the crosswalks. It's a consideration that, if that's what the desire was, obviously that can be put in. But wherever possible, there's a stop sign in front of the crosswalk.
The stop signs are existing, or?
Yes, they're all existing except for one is proposed down at the intersection. Because it's right, and that intersection certainly appears that currently, I don't know whether the stop sign, I don't know what happened with it, but it should be an all-way intersection the way it's partially signed today. The 2 different signs, the magenta sign is shown as the crosswalk with the pedestrians and the arrow pointing directly down at the crosswalk. Those are at the higher pedestrian and higher vehicular volume conflicts, which are along the more major roads, again, the higher volumes. And the orange sign is the same pedestrian sign except ahead. So that's the advanced warning where there's the one at the crosswalk itself. So again, if you put all those together, you have a series of crosswalks, curb ramps, and signage to alert the motoring public that there's pedestrians, in addition to the school zone signs that we talked about before, with flashing lights and the 15-mile-an-hour speed limit.
The signs, is that something that the township crew could do rather than putting it out for bid?
You know, that's, yeah, it would be up to the township and the public works whether, you know, they want to put those in or whether that would be,
And maybe when it comes to public works,
they could make that decision.
we could ask Dennis whether they have the sufficient time to do that.
Yeah, that might, you know.
I wouldn't want them screwing around with the striping, but at least the signage, I know they have a lot of signs and they're used to putting signs up, so at least we could ask to try to save a few bucks or what we can.
And then the final item on this plan, well, actually the two final items on the plan. One is the, again, the higher volume pedestrians and particular roadway crossings where it actually crosses would be the, proposed to be the simulated paver crossing to match what exists today down Sauerkraut over in the Brandywine Village area. And finally, the Gs with the circle are preliminarily where everyone thought consideration for a school crossing would be considered. 6 locations, and there's 2 down.
The question came up at the school board meeting. Is it proposed to have kids walking down Sauerkraut and coming up the Sauerkraut lane driveway or the walkway next to Sauerkraut over here, I want to say, up to the school? Is that part of the walking trail, or was the walking system to come up the location? No.
Yeah, it was looked at with these arrows as what would be the closest route. So for the most part, these people are going to come up here and come in the site driveway off of Mill Creek. However, there's probably some residents that are over in this area that would prefer, and has been accommodated, to come across along Sauerkraut with a separated path over a potentially marked crosswalk and up the.
Yeah, I phoned them up through here and through here to make that.
But that way they're not, you know, buses coming. There's only 6 buses anyway. How does the school district look at that? Are they looking at it as an entrance way or?
We're planning to have a staff member there so that if we do have walkers coming up through there, we would be able to safely get them up to where we can take them across.
So you are considering that?
We're going to encourage them not to use that, to use the 2 side entrances, because we think that gives better separation. But
so if I could also ask, just confirmation of where this cyan line is here and where we need to add it over to these 2 developments over here, whether that matches. We've attempted to match what the list of the developments that we had gotten previously, just make sure that everybody's in agreement with that, so that the improvements match the
currently those
are. We would strongly request that the school district, if they're making any changes at all, to be in contact with our people. We don't want to go forward with something and find out that they decide to add something or.
And we agree.
Okay. So for the benefit of the public, we're basically talking about this area right here. You notice there's nothing here, and it's just mentioned that those 2 developments are included.
The only question I have about the developments, and the school district hasn't really given an answer, is one of the ones you just circled, Mr. Urban, is Willow Bend. And that has not been on the list. Total Circle.
Penn's Meadow and Brookfield are the 2 right here.
Right, and Willow Bend has not been, which is the circle above,
right, yeah.
Eli Circle. And I just want to get confirmation that Willow Bend is not.
Is it the entire Penn's Meadow or just?
We have no confirmation right now because the board is able to work on any of the recommendations that we've put forward to them, and they can certainly modify that.
But we know that the .75 and 1.5 are out there, so my question is Willow Bend, for example, it seems like if Graymore is in the 1.5, then Willow Bend is obviously in 1.5 as well.
The only reason I'm asking Glenn is when we go forward, we want to make sure we capture everybody. You can clearly see we've done nothing there. So we need some direction on what to include. And we can deal with that outside the forum.
Question?
On your school's plans, do they address the sauerkraut entrance having a walkway that does not flow all the way up the driveway? You have to cross halfway up. And you have one crossing guard on sauerkraut. You need a second one.
Does that walkway cross? Is this coming up here?
It doesn't go all the way up the driveway.
It dead ends and you have to cross what will be now 2 lanes of bus traffic. The bus is leaving the bus drop-off area and the bus is arriving.
Here.
Yeah, the sidewalk does not run along the driveway.
Okay, so there is a crosswalk proposed up there.
There's one currently.
Plan right now that I see. So, and maybe one in the field, I don't know. Okay. All right.
Yeah, that would, we consider on-site.
Right.
This is technically off.
This is the off-site.
So,
May I ask
Yes.
I have an off-site question.
Sure.
Okay. Willow Lane, I'm very thankful and grateful that there's a crosswalk listed at Wheatland Drive and Willow Lane. And I was just wondering, I know from personal experience that the rise of cars, if I'm exiting Wheatland to cross Willow, the rise of cars from my right because of that hill is very correct, traveling, I guess that would be south. And I was just wondering if there were any plans to put any pavement markings, or if that would be a possibility to say there's a crosswalk ahead. You know, even just painting something on the pavement so drivers who are coming up the hill won't be caught by surprise that there's a crossing guard.
Well, theoretically, they should be slowing to 15 miles an hour once they pass this.
That's
So keep in mind that once they pass this, they should be doing 15 until they literally get past this one.
Okay.
So they're coming up that grade of 15 miles an hour.
Yeah,
When they do it or not is another issue.
Right.
They're supposed to be.
But there'll be flashing lights to show.
The flashing light here
Okay.
should work and slow down until they get there.
There's,
The other, no.
I'm sorry, there's really 3 levels. It's the school zone with flashing lights, the sign that's a crossing ahead, a crosswalk ahead, so no matter what precipitation.
Oh, so they'll have one of those.
Yeah,
Right.
and then there's the sign at the crosswalk, which is another sign, and then there's the actual textured crosswalk.
Sounds good. The other question I had too, and we sort of alluded to the fact of cars taking shortcuts and doing things to avoid the traffic. One of my concerns is that cars may pull on if they were proceeding south on Willow, pull along the right side of Willow Lane where there's no curbing or anything, and that's a place where parents may drop off their children to access that walking path along Willow. And I just want to throw that out there as a possibility or a concern if we need no parking signs or something like
that's no
that.
problem.
We can monitor that.
That's some no parking signs along there.
Yeah.
They should not be stopping there.
Well, and I should also say that that area is extensively used for overflow parking when there are events at the school. So, you know, I'm more concerned about the children who are going to be dropped off and the traffic that's going to be
Because
pulling
there's a
over.
drainage swale along there. People
Correct.
fairly delicate.
Correct.
You know, they shouldn't be-
They actually park along Willow Lane.
That's correct.
Other side of the road.
Yeah, particularly if there's a function going on at the school.
I wish I could. I wish I could.
Well, that's what I'm thinking, the walkway that cuts across the school property, it intersects with the walkway, the bike path, and I can see parents avoiding the parking lot, just pulling over, and Willow dropping off the kids, there's the walkway, go.
So, no parking.
In fact, maybe could we consider no parking signs here as part of your on-site work? Because it's similar to what you did down on Sauerkraut. I think we required you to put no parking signs down there. 2 or 3 no parking signs.
Do we need to pass an ordinance to have no parking?
To enforce
We have to do whatever.
it, we do.
I mean, we can put
Yeah.
signs.
You take it as the
Yeah, we'll take care of
We put up the signs.
So we'll look at that
Yeah,
as part of this, plan preparation. Also say aye, I don't know if you had it on this plan or not, but I think we need end of school zone signs too.
Yes, they're on here.
Okay.
Well, actually, well, I'll make sure they're on here.
Yeah. We can do it.
I'll make sure they're on. Trust me, it'll have an end. And,
with the zone there.
Okay. Now, are there any more questions? I know you have a lot. I'm going to, maybe to take a few other people back here.
Could you provide a little bit more clarification on the expedited approval process? I didn't catch it all. Being that the school board delayed in getting you guys the plans, as you mentioned, I didn't want it to slip through the cracks where like a certain board really should review it, but it's really not getting it the proper attention.
No, that's a good question. As planning director, as
I'm
planning,
happy
I
to
will have my
respond.
planning director.
We have a process in our subdivision land development ordinance when there's a minor change, which there's not a new building being built or anything, they're rechanging the parking lot. It would go to this committee, which is a public meeting and is on the agenda. It would go to staff, which would include the fire department, our engineers, me, our zoning officer, and also then eventually with those recommendations up to the Board of Commissioners at a public meeting. If it was a new building coming in, there'd be a planning commission meeting too, but since it's just rearranging things on the site, it falls into that minor category, which still takes you through 3 levels of review.
But one of the misunderstandings is there's a perception by some people that the expedite means there's regulations not being followed. It's exactly the same review process in terms of what's looked at. It's the steps to get to the commissioners.
The same issues will come up.
Yeah,
Right.
it'll all be technically reviewed.
All right, thanks. And I thanks for looking at Ms. Kuhn's report, because I think it's comprehensive, and there are several items in there that, the safe to school routes sponsored by PennDOT that I think are very valid, that I want to make sure that doesn't get overlooked.
But you still have to be careful, as Commissioner Brown indicated, we got apples and oranges here. There's two projects.
Right.
There's a school district on-site, which
Right.
is mainly dealing with the circulation of traffic and the buses, not the walking.
Right.
And then there's the walking issue, which is
the second plan.
the second plan. That's more the township than actually the school district.
Okay.
But we understand what you're saying.
Okay. Back with.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that I get the clarification. I believe I heard you say you're going to be doing some minor work or something in the floodplain. Is it or is it not true then that you'll need a permit to do any work in there?
They've indicated that they will not be working in the flood.
Not going to.
If they were.
I thought I heard you say it was
We
minor.
said if they were. Then we would, obviously, that may trigger variances or other boards or whatever. And again, our zoning officer will be reviewing that when the plans actually come in.
But don't you need a state DEP or whatever it is?
Only if they're in the 100-year floodplain.
In the 100-year.
Yeah, if they're in the 500-year, then they actually can do some grading, as long as the water elevation doesn't raise by more than 1.5 inches.
But if they're in the 100-year.
Yeah, 100, they need state approval, they would need a variance from the township zoning hearing board also.
Okay, thank you.
And they're going to try to avoid that, because that's going to add months.
Yeah, I think you have to understand, this is a sketch. So there's a speculation that it might be in the 100-year. If it is, they said they're going to move it.
Yeah, I
So we don't know
I
for
heard
sure.
that discussion, that's why that question
Yeah.
popped up.
No, that's a good question.
They'll be doing what they can to avoid that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Sir.
The off-site, the Wheatland Drive, the proposed Wheatland Drive cross. Now, I have in the past advocated for the in-road LED crosswalk. This is completely separate from that. Potential solution in regards to dealing with the slope and the visibility issues that sort of coming up the hill and over. I have seen in the past what these are is they're not the LED crosswalks, they're rather LED signs. They're just like the pedestrian or the crosswalk ahead signs you have in your map there. Except all they are is there's a button on the pole, and then there's actually an LED outline around the pole. Now the advantage in this situation would be that the sign of the pole is about 6 foot up off the ground level, so coming up you could potentially see the flashing sign when there is a pedestrian waiting to cross, and I think that would help deal with the slope issue on Wheatland Drive. And these are significantly inexpensive when compared to the in-road LED systems. The quotes I've seen for the signage, not installation, is they start at about $1,500 a pop for each sign, which versus an in-road LED system is about a 15th of the cost.
I'd have to defer to the traffic engineer to look at that
Sure.
situation. I can tell you that a crossing guard is proposed at that intersection.
And it's also a 17-mile-an-hour zone. So, while the school students, this is all designed for, the school students. So if it's within that point, then an approaching vehicle is only going to be on 15.
Sure, and I understand that. And a lot of these I feel are relevant, you're talking within the context of walkers from the school and school zones. A lot of these improvements I feel are relevant even outside of that context. That these are things we should be considering considering all the time for all our crosswalks, where there makes sense.
Anyone else? Did you have one?
I have two questions. One is, well, actually, they're both regarding the Mill Creek Road entrance. One of the things that the district is proposing is straightening out that crosswalk. The one that I should say, eliminating one of the crosswalks
We're
from the
gonna
cross
put
over
that
the
on the other
driveway.
side.
Yeah, and then would that require, though, working on township property? As
Well,
far
that is
as-
township property.
Right, so,
Yeah.
okay.
So it'll be subject to our review.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
our comments.
Okay.
That would all be part of the engineer's review.
Okay. And the other question I have is, I believe, the question is regarding the interaction between the Mill Creek driveway and Mill Creek Road itself. I don't believe on the plans that I saw for the district that there is a left turn only lane leaving the school. Currently on the Sauerkraut entrance, we have a left turn, right turn only lane to
It's
exit.
much wider.
Right.
This isn't wide enough for 3 lanes.
Right, so I'm just wondering if at the intersection, they're also on Sauerkraut, is currently on the roadway, a left turn lane dedicated to traffic entering the school. And I'm wondering, is that going to be also put in on Mill Creek so that cars that are traveling, I guess, south to turn left into the school, if that's going to back up traffic on Mill Creek for parents who are turning left into the driveway? Do you understand?
Yeah, no, I'm going to say, I think Mill Creek has a lot less traffic on it than Sauerkraut. I could be wrong. I have a panel of experts that are going to tell me I'm wrong in a second. I think, I'll ask them if they think they need separate turn lanes at that point. We'll look at it as part of the process here, but I'm kind of thinking that Mill Creek doesn't get the traffic that Sauerkraut does, but, which may not warrant the turn lanes. Okay. All right, one more.
One more. I just wanted to, I guess, express a concern. I live in Brookside Farms, and my concern is that some of the people who reside in my development will be cutting through Brandywine 2 in order to shortcut over to the Mill Creek entrance of the school. And I don't know if there's anything that can be done about that.
That
but
shortcutting is done all over the
I know,
township for
I know.
many, many reasons.
I know, and
We can't-
similarly, I know
there's
that.
only so much we can do.
I know. Well, I just put it out
With all due
there.
respect.
Well, I'm going to be guilty of it, I know. And also, I know Brookside Farms will become a cut through to avoid the sauerkraut at Willow and Sauerkraut.
Doug cuts through my development and I cut through his.
All right,
you know.
so it all comes out the wash.
This traffic goes through this development to get over to this side.
That's what I would anticipate is going to happen, rather than go
Probably go this way.
exactly like Carmel Drive and go over. And similarly, cars will take a right onto Wheatland to avoid the intersection at Willow and Sauerkraut. We'll cut right on Wheatland, left on Fieldview, left on Thistle, and then cut over to Sauerkraut that way. I would anticipate. So, it will happen, but just so we're aware it's going to happen.
It's your neighbors.
I know.
What's your name? Yeah. Okay. Yes, there was one more question there.
Any additional signs or pavement markings planned on Sauerkraut to slow traffic down? If there will be walkers there?
Sauerkraut itself, it's intended that, since there is sidewalks and everything on both sides, that there's very limited places that are intended to cross. Basically, one at Willow Lane, one at Mill Creek, and the existing one at South Turn down there. And those would all be proposed to have the signs, the crossing guard, and the textured pavement. So signage, people, and the textured pavement.
Okay. At this point, is there any action needed by this committee?
Nope, this is informational.
So April 4th, it goes to the board, right? Is that what we're doing?
No, I don't think we've had a
There's
submission.
no official submission yet.
What
Talk
cause
about
the
that.
outside improvements to go to the Board of Commissioners?
Ron requested this
as
to
part
go
of
to the
the-
board, so at April 4th, we'll be presenting this just the way we did
Just as
today.
a public
for
information.
Just
Yeah,
information.
No action until we get a submittal and
Yeah, just
set
like
this
we're-
committee.
Yeah, no
Yeah.
problem.
Okay, so. this
People can come back April 4th to the
Second
board.
meeting.
And between now and then, we'll identify just what's needed here and get that.
Doug and I
out.
both mentioned, though, you might have not been here, to the school district, though, that before we proceed in spending all this money, that we need some kind of commitment from the school district that they truly are going to bust.
Oh, wow.
Or, I mean, walk, I'm sorry.
Either way. Well, and then this, it sounds to me like, Paul, you might be back to this committee in April and have something for staff to review. Our next meeting here is April 11th, and we need something at least a week before to take a look at. Okay, that's,
I have to talk to the district and
Yeah.
see what
I
their
feel
wishes
more than a
are.
week before.
2 weeks before.
2 weeks before? How about 3? We're negotiating here.
We'll do our best to get it.
Come on, Paul, we need 3.
That means I'm gonna have to already start.
We're willing to work with the school district as far as the timetable, but don't wait for the last minute and
Right.
shove down our throat, you know.
We'll work on it.
I'm just getting
I mean, for
authorized
your
to get
official
started.
submission, I mean.
We didn't start until we came here to find out the whole scope of what we're doing.
Okay.
So that's,
I
there
mean,
are no plans beyond what you
Regardless
said.
of what boards you either have to go through or don't have to go through, your job's the same.
As long as I'm released to do it, sure.
Yeah, I mean, all right,
Jim,
my
so you're good with this?
position is-
Please come with
Yes.
I was looking at it, but
Thank you.
All right, just if it's quick.
It will be quick. It has to do with the crossing guards. It's been discussed at East Penn School Board meetings that there was 2 crossing guards proposed and that the township would be willing to split the cost of employing those crossing guards with the school district. Is that correct?
that hasn't fully been discussed with our board. There's kind of a general understanding of shared responsibility, but as far as the number and everything, I don't think we got into
No,
that.
we have no idea how many we're going to have at this
Quite
point.
frankly, I'm a little surprised there was 6.
Yeah.
I thought there was going to be less, to be honest. with
Actually,
you.
it was 8.
Or 8. Yeah.
You know, I kind of thought I heard someone say the crossing guards in mass or like volunteers.
They are.
And gee whiz,
Yeah.
maybe I
Township
maybe I
and
get some volunteers.
I guess the school, I mean, when I was in elementary, the kids themselves
Yeah.
with the
Yeah,
crossing
same.
guards.
Yeah,
They
I
do
was
that
the same
anymore.
one. I was one of those.
I was the same way. No, they are.
With the
No.
flags.
We'll be,
Actually, AAA does have that program. I just looked it up online, and I was going to propose it to Willow Lake, so I'm on
It's a
top.
good idea.
All right.
Teachers leadership.
I want to thank you guys for coming. I want to thank everybody that showed up for this. It's certainly a very important project, and I want to keep you all in the loop as best we can.
We're happy you're here.
There will be another meeting, if you're going to leave now, I'll tell you, there'll be another meeting the second Thursday in April. Hopefully, these plans will be provided by the school district, that we can have some further discussion on it. The off-site improvement plan will be presented to the Board of Commissioners meeting the first Thursday in April. It'll be a little bit farther along than what you see here.
April 4th.
April 4th. And to that end, I think we'll, since no formal action is required, we'll move on to the next
So
item.
you might want, the agenda's on the website, so if it's not on this meeting.
Okay, and our agenda is posted now. This meeting agenda is posted on the website. We move forward into 2013.